Asked what's changed? Why do we flood so much worse, more often than ever before? And this particular person said, we flood from the road, not the brook. And it can't just be global warming. This is a general question to anybody on the panel who might have any insights or thoughts about why this suddenly got so bad relatively quickly. Anyone want to stick their hand up and answer that question?
Part of the road. The village road, the top road, the main road. You don't know what road
I don't know who submitted the question.
We all know which road it is, Barry. It's the main one through the village, from the top to the bottom. So you know where it is.
Nobody knows the answer anyway. Yes.
The road, basically. People are saying they're flooding the road, not the brook, but it's the brook that floods the road in the first place.
Did everyone hear that?
The person who asked the question is saying we flood from the road and not the brook, but it's the brook that floods the road. It's the brook that floods out at the mill, and it's the brook that floods the road where it breaks out at the shop and the social club. So.
Where we are. We have a huge amount of water running down there off the road.
Got a whole section covering the marsh coming up. Thank you. By the way, anybody who has pre-submitted a question who is here, if you want to, if I'm misrepresenting your question or if you want to add anything, do speak up. The question then is, what is happening upstream that could be exacerbating the flood problem in Wellington? Two potential answers to that have been proposed. One is farming practices. Have they changed? It has been noted that from the last flood that the water seemed a different colour, more dark brown. Has any new agriculture or planting upstream changed this to make it happen? And water is now directed and washing into the brook. The other suggestion has been the only thing other than anything that's changed is that all the new houses further upstream at Cannon Iron. So this might be Steve, it might be Tom, it might be Holly or Sarah, or who would like to go first? Furthest away.
Yeah, so what's changed? I think there is no doubt we are in change of climate, and if you look back through rainfall records, I've got them from just up at King's Pyre that go back 35 years. The last 2 years have been the wettest 2 years by quite a long way. Anyone farming in the room will certainly know that. So that's one thing. Generally, in the country, soils have lost organic matter. And organic matter in soils holds on to water. Generally, soils in the country, not just here, have become more compacted, and water doesn't go in as quickly. It tends to run off just like a road. And that the combination of the two give you events where you get relatively small amounts of rain, but it can wash into the brook much quicker because it goes off the top. And what that also does is make the water dirtier because it's taking soil with it. So what can be done about that? Well, lots of things, but it's not necessarily ploughing, which was one of the questions. Has ploughing or not ploughing made the situation worse? Well, ploughing could make the situation worse than it is to a minimal tillage, which was what was described in the question, because you've got much more loose soil. So you could have a lot more soil and water coming through your village. But one thing I did before I came, actually it was only last night, but I just looked on Google Maps at Wellington, and I don't it's a job to tell from Wellington, but it looked to me like there's a lot of new building in Wellington, as well as Cannon Iron, and a lot of hard standing, which is associated with new building. And hard standing is like having a compacted field. The water can't go in, it runs off. And if it's got to go somewhere, and everyone has a legal right to discharge water downstream. That's enshrined in law. So And what can be done? Well, lots of things, and Tom's put in attenuation ponds. I had reservoirs which held 4 reservoirs on the farm, which between them held 55 million gallons of water. And I approached DEFRA and said, well, I'll pump them out in the summer and let them fill up in the winter when we have lots of rain. And then when it rains again, when we have a dry period, just gradually empty them. So there's constantly water going down. But somebody's got to, pay for that, even if it's only a pump to do it, or the electricity to run the pump. Somebody's got to pay for it. And the government haven't got any money. They've cut the agricultural budget. It's cutting welfare. They keep saying it's got to come from private funding. Well, you all need to get together and tell your insurance companies, and they can pay. Either they pay you or they pay the projects to help the flooding that you're suffering from. So that's where I see the sort of problems and where it's coming from.
Before I move on to Holly, Sarah, Tom, any comments on the Cannon Pine?
Right, I'll just introduce myself. I'm the chairman of the Pines Group Parish Council. Please do not blame me for walk development at Cannon Pine. The issue as I see it, and I'm now speaking as a private person rather than as the chairman of the council, is yes, we've had a fair amount of development in Cannon Pine, 70% increase in the number of houses. And I'll bore you now with history. We go back to the last ice age, where you've got the gravel, we've got the clay. Go back to the Romans, they built a nice road straight across the natural flow of the water, and then we have developments on the upstream side of the road, and now that just channels or funnels the water in. And if I'll just borrow Jenny's map, if you see on the left-hand side where it all goes into a funnel, well, we've got that times 4 in Cannon Pine, where it goes through the gaps in the estates, comes down the roads, and goes to Wellington. Yeah, we know as well. So for us, yes, and it's not just the stream that overflows, it is the runoff from the fields. It used to be absorbed in those upstream fields that are now estates. That saved some of the water. Now they are estates and it's hard standings, and funnily enough, 2 things happen. Water does not get absorbed by houses and water flows downhill.
Holly, Sarah, Tom, would you like to add anything about upstream?
I just want to put a bit of meat on this picture. That catchment area is just shy of 3,000 hectares, which in old money is 7,300 and a bit acres. If you get an inch of rain, 25 mil on it, that's 195.5 million gallons of water. Yeah, and that's just with an inch. I've spoken to different farmers, their rain gauges have said different things, but there was upwards of 40 mil, which is 310 million gallons of water on the night of, the 20-something of November. So my attenuation ponds hold 1.3 to 1.5 million gallons of water. So we've got a serious uphill struggle to try and collect what comes down the river. So what do you do? The government last week cut the SFI payments for farmers to, or the schemes totally for about a year. So, like with what I've done with my farm, all my arable area has gone into a thing called legume fallow, which is deep rooting grasses and vetches and stuff, which does what the opposite of what Steve was saying. It smashes the soil basically with the roots and it makes the organic matter a lot higher, so you catch a lot more water. I've done that with 100 acres. We're dealing with 7,300 acres. So you're getting in the realms of a lot of farmers have got to do a lot of stuff and get paid to do it, to hold the water back. But as of last week, the government has just said, no, we're not doing it anymore for a bit. So, yeah, I don't know. And I'm really sorry about that. I'm trying. I want to put in more flood defences if I can, depending on one field I'm thinking about it. I'm one of 10 who owns the field, so I'm trying to persuade them just to, even if we can get a bund in, I'm going to ask these guys if they can do some maths on it to see if I'm going to affect anyone downstream. There's not many. I'm the next house upstream, so if I flood after that, it's my fault. But yeah, I'm trying to do my bit. Other farmers are trying to do their bit, but we are fighting a huge battle.
I think just to build on what Tom said and also what Steve said, it is all about kind of capturing the water across the whole catchment. And one of the most valuable things is increasing the organic matter in the soils. 1% of organic matter increase can increase the capacity of the soil by 20,000 gallons of water. So given Tom's figures, if we can do that across the whole catchment and improve the health of those soils, that will make a huge difference to the carrying capacity of the catchment. But equally, when the rain falls at the speed and the amount that it did back in November in particular, it is very difficult for the soils to take all of that water. So a lot more does end up running downstream. And so it is a whole combination of things when you talk about why is it so much worse. It's the type of rainfall events we're having, as well as the timing of them. And one of the big things, particularly in November, there was still quite a lot of bare soil around where crops, cover crops, which normally provide vegetation cover on the ground through the winter, hadn't been able to establish because October was so wet as well. And so we did end up with a lot more soil ending up in the brook, which is when you see that brown colour, which I think it was running down the road in November. Through our project, the WiAdapt project, we have been working with farmers to do some things that Tom mentioned, and there's a lot of enthusiasm to do these things, but as Tom said, we need the finances, and we've been able to fund some of them through the Environment Agency funding, but without the SFI funding to provide ongoing management of those interventions, it's going to be very hard to support farmers to do more of that across the catchment. So one of the crucial things is finding more funding to support those interventions so that we can hold back the water before it even reaches the brook. Once it's in the brook, it's much harder to do anything about it. As Tom said, attenuation ponds like his only hold a certain amount, so we do need to really focus on the areas before the water reaches the brook.
Yeah, I think also historically, with agricultural intensification, we've moved lots of hedgerows and ponds from the landscape, and removing those features means that the water's got nowhere to be stored or can't be slowed down as it travels down the steep sides of the Wellington catchment. So yeah, we've been lucky to have a little bit of funding through the Environment Agency to put some of those features back in. So we've been doing some cross-slope hedgerow restoration, including some scrapes, some leaky dams, and also focusing on the soil aspect. So doing a bit of meadow restoration and some tree planting as well. All of those things will increase organic matter. So they're the sort of things that we're trying to do across the catchment, but again, they're quite small interventions, and they're not going to have, the impact that you need to solve the flooding issues in Wellington. But by working with landowners in the catchment, hopefully we'll, encourage other people to do similar actions over time. But again, like Sarah said, it obviously does need funding to back that up.